4 individuals were arrested in the state of New York for plotting against a Muslim community in upstate New York. Let me just get one kind of silly part of the story out of the way. The name of the community is Islamburg, which is an unfortunate name for a community, I feel like.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate in the sense that it's now led them to be targeted over and over and over again, as you're going to see in this story. And and in this case, it's also driven these guys, and it's driven right-wing conspiracy theorists to think, oh, it's in a remote area in the woods, and it's called Islamburg, so it must be a terrorist training ground.
But it's
based on nothing.
Absolutely not. It's been a peaceful community since it was founded in the 1980s. They've never had any problems. The only time they've had problems is when people have tried to terrorize them. Now, with that said, let me give you details on this foiled terror plot, and thankfully it was foiled. 4 young adults stockpiled 23 firearms, which they had obtained legally, by the way, and 3 homemade bombs as part of a plan to target the secluded Muslim enclave of Islamburg, a rural settlement about 150 miles northwest of New York City. So here are the individuals involved. One of them is a minor, and so he has not been identified. However, there was Vincent Vetromile, who's 19, Brian Colanderi, who's 20, and Andrew Kreisel, who's 18, and they were arrested and charged with criminal possession of a weapon and conspiracy. So far, they are not facing federal terrorism charges. Now, over the past several years, Islamburg has been attacked by anti-Muslim groups and some right-wing conspiracy theorists who have said that the town is actually a terrorist training camp despite its peaceful history. Now, a previous attempt at terrorizing them was in 2015. A man from Tennessee, Robert Doggart, was arrested and charged with plotting an attack on the community. Prosecutors said that he planned to recruit a militia to shoot the residents there and blow up the mosque. He was convicted and sentenced to nearly 20 years in prison in 2017.
If you think that it might be a terrorist enclave just because they're Muslims, I got news for you, you're a bigot. So I know you just got triggered if you're a right winger and you thought that. And so proceed to your safe space and you could melt over there. But think about that's the definition of a bigot. Oh, there's a bunch of Muslims there, so they must be terrorists. That is making a decision about what they are based on their religion. That is the definition of bigotry, okay? If there was a Jewish enclave and you said, oh, they must all be bankers or they're all terrorists or whatever you thought, right? That would also be bigotry and that would be fairly obvious, right? And in this case, but like I have to explain this, even though it's so obvious, because the right wing gets triggered anytime you say things that are obvious. So in this case, they are the targets of terrorism. Several different groups have tried to bomb and murder them. And they're innocent American citizens.
Yes.
They're civilians. That's the definition of terrorism. And so, but when you say, hey, it's the right wing who's doing terrorism against Muslims, oh my God, you guys are race baiting. Oh my God, how could you call it bigotry? But they say it's because they're Muslims that we're trying to bomb them.
Yeah.
How much clearer do they have to be?
Yeah, and I mean, this has nothing to do with race baiting, right? Like, I don't even know what the specific race of these young men is. Like, they could be Hispanic, they could be white. I know that they're non-Muslims, that's what I know. And they're going after a community that has caused them zero harm. Now, I wanna give props to the school administrators and also the authorities, because the reason why authorities were able to foil this is because one of the students who was involved just talked about it a little bit with another student, and the school decided to immediately investigate it. Had that student not said anything, this would not have been foiled. And it could have caused great harm to innocent members of this community who, again, have done absolutely nothing wrong. Another thing to keep in mind is that, look, there are 2 different ways that we treat terrorism in the United States. If there is a person of color or a Muslim involved, it's immediately terrorism. In this case, for the moment being, no federal terrorism charges have been filed against these people, right? Now, right-wing terrorism in America is a very serious problem. So as was reported recently, the Anti-Defamation League found that the extremist-related murders in 2018 were overwhelmingly linked to right-wing extremists. Every one of the perpetrators had ties to at least one right-wing extremist movement, although one had recently switched to supporting Islamist extremism. White supremacists were responsible for the great majority of the killings, which is typically the case. So that is a real problem, but that is not a problem that's really talked about anywhere, including the media, right? If the tables were switched and this was a group of young Muslim men who were targeting a mostly white community, right? This would be the main news story all day, every day for at least a week.
I mean, it's New York. If there was 4 Muslim guys who were planning to blow up Christians, you don't think that would lead on Fox News? You know it would. And then, by the way, would it lead on CNN and New York Times? You know it would. So look, it's not like they're not, New York Times not covering it, they are. Yeah. So, and let's wait, the federal authorities might charge them with terrorism. And if you say, hey, they're not terrorists yet, they're terrorist suspects, that's also fair. But not calling them terrorist suspects is weird. They have a stockpile of 23 weapons they're planning to go up to this community. They don't know anyone in the community. It's obviously not personal.
They have homemade bombs.
They're 3 hours away from the community. They've made bombs that have nails and gunpowder, etc., inside the bombs. So what would you have to do to be called a terrorist? If you're targeting based on a political and religious reason, and you're targeting civilians, I mean, let's stop using the word terrorism if we're not going to call that terrorist. So are they terrorist suspects? Of course they are. And okay, but I want to look again. Credit to the authorities. Credit to other people that have stuck up for this community, because there's this other goofball group called Bikers United Against Jihad, and they go out there to cause trouble every once in a while. What do you mean against jihad? You guys are the ones doing a jihad. They're the ones doing a holy war against the Muslims in this case. Remember, these are American citizens, the Muslims. Anyway, but there are usually more counter-protesters than there are bikers against jihad. So God bless the real Americans who know what this country's about and protect those innocent civilians. Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.